Tonight, I want to talk about perhaps the biggest lie that we tell ourselves about the body and how we can use the philosophy of semiology to undo the destructiveness of this lie. Now, this lie is what I'm going to call the lie of beautiful shame. We all know that our pop culture and advertising promotes a standard of beauty that when our own bodies do not match that standard, we feel ugliness and shame as a result. And the funny thing is, we all know that this lie is complete crap, and yet we can't stop believing in it. So how can we actually undo this lie? That's where semiology comes in. A little background. Semiology emerges around the time of World War I from the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. Now, interestingly enough, Saussure did not intend to create a philosophy. In fact, he published very little in his lifetime, but amassed quite a collection of papers and notes that, after he died, his students compiled them, and from there we get modern linguistics and semiology, which is the study of signs and their meaning. Basically, Saussure is talking about how when we take an actual thing that exists, such as a tree or a microphone, and we represent that actual thing with a word or an image of that thing, we get into dangerous territory because we actually get further away from the truth of that thing. So when you represent an actual thing with a word or an image, it becomes a sign in semiology. Now, a sign is composed of two things, a signifier and a signified. The signifier is basically the word that we use to represent it, such as the word microphone or the word tree, or an image of a microphone or an image of a tree. The signified is the mental concept that emerges when we think of that word or we see that image. It's basically the meaning that we attach to it when we see the representation. So, let us start with a very simple example. Let's take an apple. Now, we take an actual apple and we represent it with the word apple or an image of an apple. When we hear that word or see that image, what comes to our mind? Well, if we like apples, that we would think it's juicy, nourishing, delicious. If we don't like apples, we might think that's not my flavor. If we're a Christian, we might think temptation or banishment from the garden. Here in 2018, we might sooner think of a computer. So you get the idea. What a sign means to a person is going to vary widely depending upon their context and experience. Basically, the world that they are coming from is what gives them the ability to make meaning out of something. So, let us signify the body. Now, we take an actual body and we represent it with an image like we see here, or maybe a silhouette like we see with that bathroom sign. Now, what we think of based off of that image is going to be totally subjective based off of the person's background and experience. So, let's take two different people. Let's suppose that we have two people who grew up in this same culture, okay, who grew up with this lie of beautiful shame. And let's look at two different reactions to that culture. So, let's say person A grew up in an environment that was fitness-oriented. They ate right, they took care of themselves. They have a body that matches the standard. So, when they see body, they think, my body is strong, toned, muscular, purposeful, driven, maybe even machine-like. Now, let's say person B grew up in a culture or environment that did not take care of themselves, that had unhealthy eating. Their body does not match the standard. And so when they see body or hear the word body, they think ugliness, they think shame, they think regret. So we see that this, actually, backing up a little bit, if person A and person B were to have a conversation about the body, they would most likely disagree. Not because one is right or the other is wrong, so much as their worlds are coming into conflict. In fact, Saussure went so far as to say that this relationship between representation and meaning is totally arbitrary, completely subjective. So our understanding of the body is most of it is more based on a social construct and not an actual truth. We know that this is true because in order for this construct to work, you need two things. You need language in order to define it, and you need two people in order to play that game. You need two people to exchange said language. Now, if you don't have language and if you don't have two people, then none of this exists. Standards do not exist, and shame does not exist. Okay, now that we understand how the lie of beautiful shame works, why don't we talk about the real body beautiful? The body is beautiful in the sense that that is its nature. It is a gift from God. It is what we were meant to use and to be. The body is beautiful in the same sense that the Sierras or Lake Tahoe is beautiful. And I would argue that any other physical sense of beauty is very problematic because that's based off of a definition, a concept. But we're thinking, well, we need language, so how do we get around this problem of defining things? Well, on one hand, we need it because language makes the world comprehensible to us, right? So we can actually love the world more through words. I mean, I'm an English teacher, for crying out loud. I have to love words. So that's what good poetry does, is it makes us love life more. Now, on the other hand, language allows us to lie, to deceive, to actually justify violence, even on a more extreme end. And so, in order to get around this, we might say that language has two purposes: to understand or to attack. And so when we use our words, ask yourselves, am I using my words to understand or to attack? Using semiology, we can get a better sense of the ways in which we attach meaning to things, and then, this is the good part, unchain ourselves from that meaning. Become more conscious of how we use our words and love words more. Thank you very much.